Welcome to working title.
UnSpun?
UnSpun or Kitchen Table with George? That one was just...
Kitchen Table with George, that's right.
George Affleck, Jody Vance with you here on what we hope will be a weekly podcast, vlogcast.
Something.
Of where we try and
That's what all the kids are doing these days.
Kind of dig through the noise a little bit. And George and I met through many meetings, interviews, and whatnot, where you, as a Vancouver City Councillor, would come and sort of debunk and help me understand what was going in the world of politics, both municipally and provincially as well. You were involved in things on a provincial level, as far as knowing the goings on that so many of us find difficult to sort of navigate, for lack of a better term.
People assume there's things that things are simple, but they're not simple sometimes. And I think we'll get into a few of those issues today.
You're going to help us.
Yeah.
But we're starting simply today, just to give you an idea of what we hope to deliver on a weekly basis. One of those things is a challenge right off the top for you, George Affleck, because you and I love to talk.
Yes.
So 3 and 3. 3 topics in 3 minutes. Do you think you can stick to a minute?
I can probably do it, but you might want to get a timer going, and I think we can challenge each other, because you and I both get on these tangents, and and I think that there's we have to control ourselves, because we want to keep this podcast efficient,
tight,
for people who may be commuting or whatever they're doing, going for a run.
It's a good idea.
We're going to keep these things nice and efficient for the listener and the viewer.
So you'll be able to pick this up on the Orca.ca, which is a new, incredible, actually, news source and resource for people in British Columbia and in Vancouver specifically as well, being the biggest city in the province.
What I like about it, by the way, the Orca, is it tries to be centrist. It tries to look at both sides of the story of the issue, and provide the people going to the site and onto the Facebook page an understanding of the complexities of the issues. And I think that's kind of our point today too. We don't want to be, people might consider me to be somewhat right of center. I have always thought of myself as a centrist.
A radical centrist, we've named you.
It's a radical centrist. Is it an oxymoron?
I think a little bit.
Yeah, but having been a journalist, I understand balance, and you obviously are still a journalist, and I think it's important for us to look at things apolitically as much as we can and talk about them more from the back, the underside of it, and look at it that way.
Let's call it the middle. Because speaking of, every Wednesday on the Orca.ca, you can read my column, The Middle, which is exactly what, when I connected with those who are in charge of the middle, you know who you are. Thank you for bringing me on. The Orca set, I said, I come from I want to see both sides. I want to find the middle and the common ground. Everything seems so polarizing these days, and it's important that we know all of the facts if we're going to find that center, that middle, that opportunity to make positive change. And I think we've politically moved away from that in so many ways globally that maybe our little podcast can help.
I think so, and I think Canada in particular is quite centrist, and I look at Vancouver certainly politically as a very centrist city.
All right, but what about, I'm starting the timer.
Okay, first issue.
What about the upcoming Nanaimo by-election?
By-elections, they're just Nanaimo and actually the one in Burnaby. These are 2 by-elections coming up, and by-elections are always interesting. We've heard a lot of stories about them being potentially going against what the government of the day might be, but actually the one in Burnaby might end up being liberal, going with the government of the day. But the one in Nanaimo is definitely, as we have all heard.
What's been going on in Nanaimo, George? Come on.
Well, the big deal is, of course, if Liberals win, we know, then it's a 50-50 split.
43-43 split, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. And then we end up with basically an election that has to happen provincially.
But if that election were to happen, when might it happen, or when might it not happen? That's another of our 3 and 3.
That I think is interesting. There's some stuff going on in the behind the scenes that is going to delay that election, I think, if there is a provincial election overall. But I think the one in Nanaimo, what's interesting, I thought one of the funniest tweets I saw, which was kind of sad, but having been in politics, you sort of know what this is like. There was a tweet from the BC Liberals with a room full of people, and I think it was Keith Baldry tweeted out saying, "Oh, a room, great success," or whatever, 14 people or 12 people in the room. And I actually recognize
full room.
I recognize about 4 or 5 of those people from Vancouver. So it's it's one of those things in politics. It's almost like you really try to have these events and people show up, which is great, and you try to be motivational. But then Twitter can sometimes work against you when you see these tweets and then somebody puts a photo out and then saying great energy in our room today, and you're going, well, there's 12 people there.
There's 12 people there. That's a $1.30 we call it.
And we haven't even got into the
Haven't even got it. You know what? I'm going to say we're going to do 3 minutes, 3 things, 3 minutes each. So keep going about Nanaimo because I'm fascinated.
Well, we have the 3 candidates: Tony Harris, and we have Sheila Malcolmson and Michelle Ney. Michelle Ney is the daughter of the former mayor. There's a statue. She's Green Party.
Right.
I'll be interested to see if the Green Party split that left side, and maybe that will help the Liberals go up the middle. This is a ground campaign for sure. In politics, there's this thing called the ground campaign and the air war. Ground campaign is knocking on doors, really, phone calls, and air war is advertising, using social media. But this game, I think, in Nanaimo for the most part, will be knocking on doors and getting that vote out, getting your base out, getting your vote out, and so that'll be interesting to see. I know the BC Liberals are really being aggressive in getting anybody they can from the province to go to Nanaimo over the next few weeks to door knock. Door knocking is the most torturous thing you've ever done in your life. It is, as a politician, it's brutal. First of all, most people aren't even home.
Right.
And when we are, they like,
want to talk to
the door's like a little bit open. What do you want?
Yeah.
And
I don't do anything at the door.
Exactly.
Click.
Every once in a while you go to say, oh, hey, it's so great to see you. Tell me, and they ask you questions, but they're few and far between. So I never really understand the whole door knocking thing.
You're also in PR. Curve communications.
That's right.
So you know how to get the word out in a way that not necessarily is knocking on someone's door at dinner.
I look at his Facebook as a kind of a virtual door knocking. It's a very effective way to communicate. Twitter is more, I find, with politicians and media, is very connected to those two worlds.
Yeah.
But the general public aren't on Twitter, I find. It's generally nerds who are into politics or stuff. And then people like us, and it gets a bit of the circle of discussion that goes on.
You can definitely live in a silo, there's no doubt about that. That's why you need to broaden your horizons on who you follow on Twitter, who are the must-follows on Twitter, and who maybe you follow because
hashtags
you want...
Hashtags, I follow a few hashtags.
Yeah.
That's an efficient way to use Twitter.
We'll get to twisted tweets in a second, but I wanted to cover one more or 2 more topics with you.
Right.
Let's go to this one with Daryl Plecas, because there is a little bit of a tie-in to with what you were speaking about.
Are we up? It's 3 minutes up?
Yeah, it's 3 minutes is up.
I did it. Oh, I went over.
It doesn't matter.
Oh my God, I'm a failure
Over's
in
good.
the first
Over's okay
challenge.
when the content's good, George.
All right.
It's okay.
All right.
So let's talk about Daryl Plecas and what is happening with regard to the groundswell. What would you call what is happening to Daryl Plecas politically outside of the legislature? Well,
there's 3 things about Daryl Plecas that bug me. The first thing was his betrayal to the party. And I'm, as a party politics person historically, although I'm not involved now, you don't do that to your party. You either leave, or just be quiet. Or I just found his betrayal in such a precarious situation that they were in.
So for the person watching right now, is like, what are you talking about?
Well, when he ran as a BC Liberal. He's from the Valley, and then there was the whole issue with regards to the election and the Green Party alliance, and basically him saying, he's not going to support the caucus, made the Liberals lose power. For
a member of the Liberal cabinet to become Speaker, really tipped it so that the NDP Green could happen.
But it's a nice gig, that Speaker gig, as we have learned even more so.
But his constituents are.
They are doing a recall campaign, and I hear they've got 300 volunteers out there. And there's a ground game where they're out there knocking on doors trying to get people to sign this petition to get him booted. There's one for Eby going on too. So that'll be interesting.
Attorney General David Eby, if you're just tuning in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks for keeping
well, you're talking really quick succession, and I love that about you. You're brilliant. That's why I wanted to do this with you in the first place, because you're so smart on the topic, but not everybody is as immersed in politics the way we kind of need to be educated about it, which is one of the reasons why UnSpun was born, is that we need to make it simple enough and yet not dumbed down, because you got to be on top of this stuff. We got to understand what's going on. You don't necessarily need to pick a side.
No, and actually the name of our show, as it is right now, UnSpun, is something that I've always been challenging. When I was in council in Vancouver, I found that the spin that was going on by Vision Vancouver was astronomically. It was crazy how much stuff they were spinning to misguide the electorate. And so for me, this is also about talking about things that are how do we unspin this and get to the bottom of the story. So with Plecas, though, the final thing that I've heard there was the fact that he betrayed the party, defected. Then this whole chaos in December where there was a firing and it's a RCMP investigation and all this stuff.
With the Sergeant-at-Arms and the clerk, right? We still don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah. The mystery of behind the scenes. And by the way, a lot of that stuff you can't talk about because of legal situations, having sat and dealt with staff going into where we're maybe firing people at City Hall. There's a whole process you have to go through, and there's a silence you're required to follow.
We have 2 special investigators right now on this, and nobody knows what's going on. Isn't that just a little bit weird? Is it a little unusual?
It's the fact that we know it so much as the public is what's weird. Okay. We should not have been told that this was happening.
We shouldn't have been privy to the perp walk?
Not really. No, that should not have happened. That was innocent until proven guilty, and now those guys look guilty, and we don't know what the heck is going on. So,
but Plecas said that when us, the tax-paying public, find out what actually has happened with the Sergeant-at-Arms and the clerk, once we find out what they have allegedly done, if we don't, and I believe he said if we don't throw up, he will quit, yes, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but why do we keep being
most interesting challenge to people I've ever heard. There's a mass throwing up across the province.
Timing-wise, everything seems to be. We'll have another meeting in 3 weeks. We'll have another meeting in the new year. We'll have another meeting.
Yes.
Delayed. Is the delay just?
There's some weird delays going on, and I think I've heard rumors. I think Baldry tweeted this out yesterday about the third thing is here. Plecas wants to hold on till June, or there's people who were voted in 2013 who, if you stay 6 years at the legislature, you get your pension. If you get booted before your 6th year, you don't get your pension. And so June is the magic month where 6 years becomes that magic moment where you get your retirement gig, your package. Plecas is one of those people. There's a bunch of them that are in that window. So there's going to be this discussion going on that maybe this is that we won't see a provincial election until after June. It's just not Liberals. This is NDP people as well who are going, I want my pension.
And people who might not necessarily assume they may be reelected would be looking to hold on till that date because that's a big nut.
Yes, it's a lot of money.
Squirrel away.
Oh yeah, it's a sweet little prize for. I mean, being in politics is not all fun and games for sure. And I'm not speaking against pensions.
It's for the thick-skinned only.
Yes.
It's a tough gig. Yeah. Okay, so that's our 3 and 3, which we're going to have to turn into 3 and 9.
We didn't even get to the third one.
No, we didn't. Okay, so you want to get to the third one?
Well, we'll keep it short. We'll add it up to 9. But the pipeline politics that we've seen this week.
We have to touch on this. What is going on there?
Well, I know we've got
drama.
A small group of a minority of groups of these the First Nations who are creating this havoc. But it's interesting to see that they've come to an agreement about letting these guys across the bridge. But now we're not hearing anything from anger. Or there's no outrage from the environmental people who are supporting them. I haven't heard from them in the last day or so.
No.
Saying anything. They're out there marching. David Suzuki out there last week with them. Marching on the streets of Vancouver about this LNG pipeline. And now they've gone quiet.
It's a natural gas pipeline, I heard. It wasn't LNG.
Oh, right. Sorry.
I just learned that from Keith Baldry. A lot of Keith Baldry in this podcast. We love this gentleman for keeping us up to
This podcast brought to you by Keith Baldry. Send your money,
but the Wet'suwet'en First Nations had gone through the process of giving approval for this pipeline to run through their land, but the hereditary chiefs, still part of this band, the two fractions, I guess, were not in agreement that the proper channels,
exactly.
But the hereditary chiefs now have decided, okay, we get it, we're on board now. So where do the protests go here? This will be something we'll probably talk about for weeks and weeks to come, because even Premier John Horgan was fairly interesting at his.
He needs to support this. If he doesn't support this, he's not supported anything. I mean, he needs to be somewhat pro.
We're open for business, right?
But this is going to divide the NDP. This is a big problem if you've got the union guys versus the environmental guys. These two factions within the NDP, it's a balancing act for Horgan, and this is not going to make them happy. So we'll see what effect.
And it makes it even more difficult when it's the NDP and Green Party. Because within the NDP there's that, but then there's the NDP Green.
Yeah.
There are promises and
what
deals
exactly
being made, are there not?
What exactly has the Green Party gotten out of this deal? Not much.
Not much yet.
So we'll see but that's what bugs me about that deal, the backroom deal. We don't even know what they've negotiated really. There's nothing that's public that I've seen that makes me feel, okay, well, this is what they're going to present. They've negotiated.
That's your homework, George Affleck. You need to dig more into that.
I'll go ask Agent Carr. I'm sure she'll tell me.
Oh, here we go. There's an inside joke for you right there. One of the things we wanted to hit on to in this UnSpun podcast was twisted tweets and some of the things that we see and find online. As we mentioned before, we kind of live in silos when we're on social media. Sometimes it's just news organizations, love talking to news organizations and finding stories and mining for gold. But when you expand a little bit, you can learn a lot about where people are coming from, even if you don't agree with them, which sparks good conversation. Or you can come up with a good idea that maybe you'll want to try and grab and use politically in your realm. But I wanted to start today with...
or you can just look at cats.
Or cat memes are cool.
I never realized a good cat meme.
Oh, and I was just about to go down to the conversation of the teapot coffee table or tablecloth guy. Yeah, we got to put that up here somewhere. Yeah, in our early discussions about this podcast, there was one particular internet find that we thought.
Okay.
So Amanda, you're going to need to add that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to
talk about them at dinner parties.
The licking.
Your wife
licking
Amanda.
the licking.
No.
We don't want to talk about that.
No licking.
But there were some good ones that backfired. Which the one that I like. You got a couple here, but the one that I like was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC, as she's being referred to. The
world's most popular congresswoman.
Yes, exactly. There was this meme that came. Well, there's this thing where somebody released this video of her doing this dance on this Breakfast Club dance on the roof of the building. Super cool.
She did it in university.
They tried to make this look like a bad thing, and of course, the wonderful world of the internet turned it into a very popular meme where they put different music. I watched about 5 of them. Every song seemed to work. It was amazing. So they put all these different songs to it, and so it totally backfired. It made it look cooler. And this is where in politics, where you try to attack people and be negative, it can really backfire on you because with the speed of Twitter and Facebook and people with their abilities to do things with their computers and do cool things, that turned into a real positive for her, and I thought that was really kind of cool.
And I found it interesting because some of her greatest fans, who are on the more Democratic side or the left of center side, who have been listening to some of her ideas, like taxing the top 5% to a 70%.
Yeah.
And some of those ideas that she's just throwing out there because she's got the conch, she has the microphone, she has the audience right now. And I was watching The View. I love watching The View because I love Whoopi Goldberg.
Okay. I'm not a fan, but okay.
I also very much, I got to say, love Meghan McCain. I don't agree with Meghan McCain all the time, but I love that her voice is there, and these two can argue and find some middle. And I learn when I'm listening to their argument. But one of the things that Whoopi Goldberg said to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was, walk in those shoes for a moment. Politically do the job for a while before you start dissing on the people that have been doing it for a long time and have laid a lot of the groundwork for what's happened here. So much politically, I'm finding, is spent blaming the guy that came before you or the woman who came before you, whatever, the party that came before you for all that is wrong.
Yes.
Instead of maybe going, okay, this is a mess right here, or this is a dumpster fire, or whatever you want to do, and then here's how we're going to move forward and fix that. And some of the things that she's trying to fix are undoable.
Potentially, I think. Well, I mean, having been a new politician at one time and going into the snake pit of Vision Vancouver in Vancouver, and there was only 2 MPA councillors, and I was thrown in there. I was thrown in there, and they didn't. I don't think they saw me coming. I was surprised, surprisingly elected for various reasons. But I was out of the gate. I came in. They're like, "You guys are wrong," and I was like super and I was throwing all this stuff, saying how they were
motion.
I had 47 motions over my 7 years, and it was all about dismantling Vision. I wanted to this party, which I felt was not doing the right things for our city. And so people would say, "Oh, hey, calm down, George. It's let's just get to know us, and maybe we can work together." I did try a couple of times, and they betrayed me. So I got
but I like, you know what, I'm glad we had this conversation because I think you've moved me a little bit more over to why not let her throw out some ideas.
I think the Democrats in America need somebody to be aggressive. We need somebody to be out there yelling and screaming. And actually, at the BC Liberals, in the case of BC, I feel that voice is missing too. I don't feel like they understand yet after that last election that they're now in the opposition and they need to start acting like the opposition. I don't see a lot of that in BC right now. And it's needed. It's challenging because people want to hear that other voice, I think.
I do. I think that's one of the reasons why I called you so many times, because it wasn't about the party that you were representing. It was about the person who was fearless in his message, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this. Do you think New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is fearless when it comes to trying to push back on slumlords? Here's an idea as a Vancouverite, and I don't know any of the inner workings. I have no idea if this would work, but I saw this tweet earlier today where Bill de Blasio of New York City is going after slumlords. And he has said that if you try and let your units go into disrepair to try and get your tenants out, we're going to come in, we're going to fine you, we're going to put restrictions on you, and if you do not comply, we are going to seize the building and we are going to give it over to a not-for-profit.
Easy peasy.
And let them take care of the tenants the way they're supposed. I thought, why not the SROs in Vancouver?
Yeah, you can't do it.
No.
It's impossible. Okay. We, having sat through this and seen had so many legal conversations, most of them, almost all of them in camera, and generally legal discussions in politics are in camera. But most of you just can't do it. Property rights are quite powerful. In the case of many in Vancouver, they have illegal teams that they fight. We tried many times to shut them down. We're going through that. We're still going through that process now with these SROs downtown East Side. And there's a chance they might still not let us take these places over. We're doing, we're trying to do this to take over the purchase and own these places, and it's not easy. You have to have a real good reason to justify that move. Generally,
But from a public standpoint, you walk through any of those buildings and you think, do you need more of a reason than this?
I know, but the only one, the kinds of things where you can take over people's property is if you're putting a highway through there or something, where you can take that property away and say, we need this, we're giving you. And we did it actually for a few properties on the east side of Vancouver when we had to build a bridge over there, over the tracks. We basically bought a bunch of properties because we needed them to build this small bridge, and they had no choice. They had to sell to us because we said this is the plan. But in this case, you can't. The arguments are pretty, they're based on social justice and those kinds of things, and those don't really fly when it comes to city governance. And I'm skeptical that in the end we'll be victorious on this on these SROs and taking them over.
I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea, and everybody wants you to do it. In Vancouver, that was always a shout. Do this, get these buildings, take them away. But imagine if you owned an apartment and somebody in the government said, "I'm taking your apartment because I need it."
It's a slippery
you're
slope.
An untidy apartment. I'm taking it over.
And that kind of takes me to the new zero tolerance impaired driving laws that have come in BC, and those scare me yet.
Hello, have you? Somebody said you were on the yellow line. We're taking. We want a breathalyzer
from your house, or in the bar, wherever you might, or if you just dropped off a couple of flats of empties, apparently. But there's the other side of that coin. There's me with the middle again. I have heard stories, and I do know stories. I was actually involved in a car accident where the guy that T-boned our car ran from the scene and wasn't found for 3 hours because he was smart enough to not go home. And then when he did get home, they couldn't breathalyze him because he had left the scene. So the whole thing is leave the scene and have a shot of vodka, or leave this. If that's a way to get around having made an error, whether it was just a single vehicle accident that no one was involved in, or something far worse, like a fatality with impaired driving. And that's where I think these laws are trying to come into play on. So do I think they're going after me, who goes down to the cold beer and wine store at the end of the street, grabs a bottle of Prosecco, takes it home and has some? I don't think they're knocking on my door.
Police states are a slippery slope, and as police get more and more power, you slowly move towards a police state. And to me, this is indicative of that kind of move. As much as I agree with that challenge where these people are running away from these accidents drunk,
these are too broad.
I just think is that there's symptom, and I just think that you're giving too much power to the police. And as much as I respect the police and want and believe in our justice system, that is pushing the boundaries of what I think is acceptable in our country. And I think that there might be a better solution than that.
Now I want your thoughts on pot.
Yeah, well, it's funny right now with the Prince of Pot and the Princess of Pot being given the boot. And that won't be the first pot shop in Vancouver to shut its doors.
That's the cannabis culture, and Mark and Jody Emery. And one of the reasons why they couldn't get a legal pot license was because both of them have priors associated with pot.
But she also, I know, didn't submit her paperwork way back in the time when she had the chance. So there were some other backstories of that one. But what's interesting, and this was always my argument at council, I support legalization of marijuana. I always have. It's a federal issue. Vancouver being lenient over the last 7 years on allowing pot shops across the city.
Lenient is an understatement.
Yeah, with over 100 of them. I was always saying, it's just not fair on anybody who's operating these things, because when the federal regulations come in, and they were already in the works at that point, even under the Conservatives, it was sort of starting to happen.
Yeah.
The challenge would be that people would have to close their shops, and all these people would, there's jobs, there's livelihoods, and that's exactly what's happening now. So that's the brutality of what, the Vancouver is like, okay, you allowed this and now you're shutting them all down. What's worse is now the regulations that we have federally, I think, are challenging, because we're creating a sort of oligopolists or monopolies like the taxi industry. Let's jump right over to the taxi industry. The taxi industry, the reason we're in this situation is because we created this limited licenses for taxis.
Right.
And we created this whole
And we're doing the
structure.
same thing with pot.
And now we're doing it with pot. And so we're going to have the same problem. These licenses, these stores are now, once this process is complete, unless the federal government loosens things up again, those are going to be so valuable. I mean, the marijuana industry is a very lucrative industry
already,
and I'm glad to get
that
away
creates
from
more black market.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, of course, you're going to start getting. You won't be able to get your candies at these stores, and all those other things.
Oh, don't even get me started on edibles. We have children. We don't need edibles.
Yeah, well, a lot of people like them.
But
I'm not going to say
get those through your doctor. That's scary. Yes, medicinal marijuana you can get it. Medical marijuana you can get edibles.
Okay. You seem to know a lot about this.
I do, actually, because I've had a couple of people in my family go through chemo, and it's very helpful.
Yeah, and I have a friend with MS. It's
there you go. Yeah. It does make a difference. But I am fearful for my son, who would take a gummy bear from somebody at school, not knowing that gummy bear is a THC gummy bear. Like, that freaks me out. But I'm totally down for legalization of marijuana, and having these dispensaries all over is fine, as long as they don't become a thing that is bought and sold through lobby and through who you know. And should the Emerys have their cannabis culture shut down? Probably not.
Well, it's a lot of jobs.
50.
For sure. Yeah.
50.
Yeah. So it's an interesting time, and
we're going to talk a lot about
and the comparison to the taxi industry makes me really frustrated, because that industry has frustrated us all for so long.
Are we going to ever have ride sharing?
Not with this government, for sure.
No?
No,
not with this government?
The reason they won is because of 2 ridings in the taxi lobbyists.
And we're going to pause right there, and we'll start next week's Unsung with that topic exactly.
Unspun. Did you say unsung?
Unspun. Unspun. Okay, George Affleck, at George Affleck.
George_Affleck.
All right,
that's my Twitter.
I'm simply at Jody with a Y.
I couldn't get that. Some kid at 7-year-old has my name. He never tweets.
At George_Affleck.
Yep.
At Jody with a Y Vance.
And then the Orca, of course, online.ca. Follow them on Twitter, and
And we're going to end it off this week with a little homage.
Oh, yeah?
And that's the way it was.
Oh.
For George, I'm Jody. See you next week.
Bye.